one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You sing.
At a special meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia duly called and held on the 17th day of March 2014 at 7:30 p.m. in the Trustees Room, 2nd floor, Village Hall, Fredonia, New York, and public notice of the time and place of this meeting has been given to the news media and conspicuously posted in one or more designated public locations in accordance with Section 104 of the Open Meetings Law.
Whereas notice of the meeting has been given to the Board of Trustees and the news media as required by law, now therefore be resolved that this special meeting of the Board of Trustees be held at this time and place concerning any business that may come before this board.
Second.
Roll call vote. Mrs. Subject.
Aye.
Mr. Ruckman.
Aye.
Mr. Series.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Aye.
Mrs. McKay.
Aye.
Okay. Reports.
No reports, Mayor.
Okay. Correspondence. We had
No
two.
correspondence either.
Didn't we have the two?
Yeah, you're, oh yeah, that's right, you had.
I'll get the two real quickly. Just an overview because we do have resolutions on them. We have a letter from the Chautauqua Health and Fitness. They would like to do a 5K run, mostly through the college, but starting from DNF Plaza. And the second correspondence is from Rick Davis at the Opera House. And Rick is asking for permission to mount a TV that was donated by DFT in the lobby of the Opera House. And there is a photograph showing an X where the television would be stationed. Now we're at the point of public portion of the meeting. Would anyone like to address the board at this time under the public portion? Seeing no one. Before we go into resolutions, I'd like to do the budget. Before I do the budget, I'd like to apologize to every department head in the village for what turns out to be a very hard-pressed budget, and I apologize for the cuts that were made, but those cuts were necessary to make it within the 2% tax cap. Today I present the village board with the 2014-2015 budget. The budget is comprised of 4 parts: general fund, water fund, sewer fund, and community foundation fund. Some of the factors that drives this year's budget are as follows. 4 companies had their properties reevaluated and reduced, creating a $820,000 496 deficit and a reduction in taxable assessed value. This reduction and its equivalent reduction is $38,125 in tax collections. As cost savings measures, we have replaced 2 department heads with part-time positions. This saves us both in salaries and benefits. The general fund. In the general fund, I am calling for a 71 cents increase per thousand of assessed value, or a 2.11% tax increase. This will take our village tax rate from 33.58 to $34.29 per thousand of taxable assessed property value. This increase remains in compliance with New York State's property tax cap resolution of 2011. This establishes a tax levy limit and affects all local governments and school districts in New York State. The village has remained in compliance with the new tax cap legislation since it was passed into law in 2011. With this increase, our expenses exceed revenues, resulting in a fund operating loss of $300,536. $300,536,000. 36.1% of unresolved fund balance is consumed to balance the budget. The village is in 2 different pension systems, one employment retirement system, ERS, the second being the police and fireman retirement system, PFRS. ERS pension rates have finally begun to stabilize after 5 years of double digits increases. Pension costs for the employee retirement system are budgeted at the same levels as 2013-2014 fiscal year. Welcome relief. The PFRS costs are projected to increase slightly by just under $23,000 or 4.9% over last year. This increase is due to the fact that there are more payroll dollars than the 2013-14 fiscal year due to the addition of personnel staff, a new ambulance, and an ambulance service. Health insurance is budgeted to increase by approximately 15% over the past year. The village is in an experienced rated health insurance plan in which healthcare users determine the plan's premiums. General liability insurance is also assumed to increase by 5% during the budget period. Part-time police officers and part-time firefighters' hourly rates remain the same level as 2013-14. Unleaded gasoline costs are set at $4 per gallon based on current rates at the pump. Diesel is calculated at $4.10 per gallon. Gasoline and diesel usage is based on historical department usage. The 2014-2015 budget reflects increases in minimum wage from the current $8 per hour to $8.75 per hour beginning December 31st, 2014. Our street department seasonal employees are budgeted for 6,000 hours at the above listed minimum wage. This budget maintains current employees levels in all departments except the fire department, where a new paid ambulance service will be implemented, which will enhance service levels to the village and town residents. Revenues from ambulance service will be used to offset costs associated with the fire department new hires. My budget proposes hiring appropriate ambulance personnel to reduce personnel cost in order to realize greater net revenues from the ambulance service. The fire department hours are budgeted at 48 hours per week, as did prior year's budgets. Fire personnel are paid straight time until their hours exceed 53 hours in any given week. The new ambulance service, I think, is a very, I'm going to come off script for a second, but the new ambulance service, I think, is a very interesting project. It's something that we're transporting patients already without any payment. And that number is increasing on a regular basis. It's something that we need to go into the chargeback system for that ambulance transportation. 75% of our fire department calls are for transportation, are for treatment of emergency care. That's why I'm recommending that we use emergency technicians rather than additional firemen to do this. As we see revenues coming in, we reevaluate and consider should we increase firefighters. But at this point right now, my recommendation would be to increase the number of EMS personnel. Water fund. Our water fund rate per 1,000 gallons is unchanged at $2.92 with a minimum rate of $25 for 2014-15 fiscal year. Our budgeted expenditures are up from 2013-2014 fiscal year's budget by 3.31% or $56,266. The water fund is projected to have an operating loss of $71,828 for the year, in which fund balance will be used to cover, leaving the unreserved fund balance at $209,633. General liability insurance increase in this budget is 5%. Health insurance also projected to increase by 15% in the water fund, which is the same as the general fund increase. Capital projects financed from local funds are at $72,500, which represents an 11.72% increase over the 2013-2014 fiscal year budget. The village will continue to address all the recommendations cited in the Chaco County Health Department survey of December 2013. Water distribution and purification infrastructure needs continued improvement to be a priority for maintaining the high quality water our residents expect. Sewer fund. Inflow and infiltration, along with deteriorating conditions, have led to additional expenses at the wastewater treatment plant and the connecting infrastructure. Our sewer rate per $1,000 rate is unchanged for 2014-2015 fiscal year. The expenses of the 2014-2015 budget exceed revenues, resulting in sewer fund loss of $188,690, or 64.7% of unreserved fund balance is consumed to balance the budget and stabilize rates. It is necessary to increase the minimum sewer rate charged by $10 per quarter effective June 1st, 2014. General liability insurance is again assumed to increase by 5% and health insurance by 15%. Capital projects financed from local funds are $48,000. We continue to do whatever is possible to maintain our infrastructure as a minimum of the cost of possible to our residential and commercial ratepayers. We are beginning an energy performance contract project for improvements at the water plant that will offset bond payments necessary to complete the projects with guaranteed energy savings. We have also entered into an energy curtailment contract with demand response that will generate some additional revenues for the wastewater treatment plant. Community Development Fund. I am designating $20,000 from the Community Development Fund as a matching grant for residential sidewalk replacement and capital cost for the village sidewalk replacement. In this budget, I thank Village Administrator Rick St. George for all of his hard work, his long hours. Saturdays and Sundays, he's a diligent worker. Also, during these difficult economic times, I applaud our village employees, department heads, and village trustees for their hard work. Dedication and cooperation. I recognize and want to make sure that the public is aware that through long hours and many letters and meetings, our village attorney, Sam Drayle, has saved this village a great deal of tax dollars with a contract and project that will be completed this year. This budget is respectfully submitted by Stephen Keefe, Mayor of Fredonia.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Siri.
Attached bond resolution authorizing, subject to the permissive referendum, purchase of various trucks for the Department of Public Works in and for the Village of Fredonia, Chautauqua County, New York, at a maximum estimated cost of $160,000, and authorize the issuance of the $160,000 serial bonds of said village to pay the cost thereof. A list of the resolution will be submitted to the clerk's office downstairs, the Village Hall, Room 1.
Second.
Okay. The roll call vote. Mrs. Subject.
Aye.
Mr. Ruckman.
Nay.
Mr. Siri.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. McKay.
Yes.
Okay, it's passed.
Excuse me, the attached bond resolution authorizing, subjects to permissive referendum, energy efficiency improvements at the wastewater treatment plant in and for the Village of Fredonia, Chautauqua County, New York, at a maximum estimated cost of $3 million, and authorizing the insurance of $3 million serial bonds of said village to pay the cost thereof.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Subject.
Aye.
Mr. Ruckman.
Aye.
Mr. Siri.
Aye.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. McKay.
Yes.
Okay, passed.
Whereas the mayor has presented the Board of Trustees the tentative village budget for the village fiscal year commencing June 1, 2014. Now therefore be it resolved that a public hearing be held before the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia on March 24, 2014 at 7:30 p.m. in the Trustees Room, Village Hall, Fredonia, New York, to consider the question of the adoption of the village budget. Be it further resolved that the village clerk is hereby authorized to cause notice of a public hearing to be published in the Observer as required by law.
Second.
Mrs. Subject.
Aye.
Mr. Ruckman.
Aye.
Mr. Siri.
Aye.
Mrs. Jones.
Aye.
Mrs. McKay.
Aye.
Okay, passed.
Mayor, just real quick before we go on, in your budget only calls for a 2.11% increase, correct?
Right.
So it doesn't even touch the tax cap, correct?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
We ready? Whereas the public hearing was duly called and held before this Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia on the 10th day of March 2014 on the question of enactment of proposal local law number 1 of 2014 of the Village of Fredonia entitled, "A Local Law Authorizing a Property Tax Levy in Excess of the Limited Established in General Municipal Law, Section 3C for the village fiscal year commencing June 1st, 2014." And therefore, due proof of publication of the notice of public hearing was presented to this board. And whereas proposed local law number 1 of 2014 of the Village of Fredonia in its final form has been laid upon the desk of the members of the Board of Directors at least 7 calendar days prior to this date, and now therefore being enacted by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia as follows. Section 1, title. The local law shall be entitled, "A Local Law Authorizing a Property Tax Levy in Excess of the Limit Established in General Municipal Law, Section 3C for the village fiscal year commencing June 1st, 2014. Section 2, legislative intent. It is the intent of this local law to allow the Village of Fredonia to adopt a budget for the fiscal year commencing June 1st, 2014, that requires a real property tax levy in excess of the tax levy limited as defined by the General Municipal Law, Section 3C. Section 3, authority. The local law is adopted prudence to Subdivision 5 of General Municipal Law, Section 3C, which expressly authorizes the local government's governing body to override the property tax cap for the coming fiscal year by adopting of a local law approved by a vote of 60% of said governing body. Section 4, tax levy limited override. The Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia, County of Chautauqua, is hereby authorized to adopt a budget for the fiscal year commencing June 1st, 2014, that requires a real property tax levy in excess of the amount otherwise described in General Municipal Law, Section 3C. Section 5, servability. If a court determines that any clause, sentence, paragraph, subdivision, or part of this local law or the application thereof of any person, firm, or corporation, or circumstance is invalid or unconstitutional, the court's order or judgment shall not affect, impair, or invalidate the remainder of the local law, but shall be confined in its operation to the clause, sentence, paragraph, subdivision, or part of this local law, or in its application to the person, individual, firm, or corporation or circumstances directly involved in the controversy in which such judgment or order shall be rendered. Section 6, effective date. This local law shall take effect immediately upon filing with the Secretary of the State of New York. Be it resolved that the village clerk is hereby authorized to cause notice of enactment of said local law to be published in the Observer, and be it further resolved that the village clerk is hereby authorized to file said local law number 1 of 2014 with the Secretary of State of the State of New York.
Second.
Okay, any discussion before we vote?
Yes, I'd like to just make it real clear to the viewing audience as well as all individuals here. Last week, Monday, there was some discussion that the passing of this resolution, which would allow, if so needed, a budget over the 2% tax cap, that this resolution might prohibit or penalize local residents when it came to a rebate by the state of New York. And I just want to make it real clear what our lengthy discussions today and last week and research is showing, that there's some confusion even in Albany and as to how those rebates are going to be given or whatever. What we're hearing most of the time is that the entire county has to stay below that 2% tax cap for any resident to receive a property rebate. In other words, that's the schools, that's Jamestown, that's Pomfret has already passed this resolution and yet managed to stay under the 2% tax cap in their final budget. But I just wanted to make that really, really clear, that simply the passage of this doesn't prohibit us from receiving a rebate. And even if we stay under the 2% tax cap and another municipality or organization goes over, it is most likely that none of us will receive that rebate. So this is just a precaution because of unforeseen circumstances. We have no intention of deliberately using it as free money to go over. And that's my thought, my opinion.
And my thought is, all you have to have is one error in your budget. A 1 in the wrong place, a 0 in the wrong place, and we could exceed our budget by an error and be penalized. And the penalties, you know, there's one thing where there's the carrot, but then there's the stick. And that stick is a penalty for overgoing the 2% tax cap without passing this first. So, and I've said from the very beginning, I believe this should be passed every year, just in the event that something does go wrong that's not foreseen, accidental, whatever. You know, Rick does a dynamic job. We all work hard on these budgets, but there's always the chance of error.
Well, the budget that you just presented, Mayor, is under the 2%
Yes.
cap.
Right,
And we are continually making adjustments to that. This is not the final budget. So
right. Mm-hmm.
Mostly cutting.
Right. Okay, any other discussion? How about
Thank
a
you.
roll call vote then? Thank you.
Nicely done.
Trustee Siri,
Yes.
Trustee Ruckman,
Nay.
Trustee Subject,
Aye.
Trustee Jones,
Yes.
Trustee McKay.
Yes.
Okay, it's passed. Is there anything else that anyone would like to bring up other than it's St. Patrick's Day? And happy St. Patrick's Day to all the Irish out there and everybody that wishes they were.
That's most of them.
I know. My wife always says that about the Irish, or the Italian, you know, she says, everybody wants to be Italian, and when she cooks, I do. Without seeing anything, Mrs.
Okay.
Jones,
I make a motion, we adjourn?
Second that motion.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, roll call?
Remember we got called out for last week?
Yeah, go on.
Mrs. Subject,
Aye.
Mr. Ruckman, Mr. Siri.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. McKay.
Mackay, thank you.
Mackay.
Mackay. Of course, that's Scottish.
Yeah.